Hey, this is Anney.
And Samantha.
And welcome to Stuff I'll Never Told You, a production of iHeartRadio. And welcome to another edition of Fictional Women Around the World. And thanks to Samantha for the suggestion, because I asked you, I was like, you know, we should start the new year with a bang. Is there somebody you think we should talk about? Is there someone I missed? And you said Maria from Sesame Street.
We have to give ode to Sesame Street.
Yes.
For sure.
Yes. So I would love for you to share your thoughts on this one. One of the reasons I actually didn't watch Sesame Street as a kid, I don't know why. My older brother did. But as an adult, I've come to really enjoy it, which sounds strange. Like, I just see clips of it and I'm like, this is so wholesome. It's so nice. Their social media presence is great.
Yeah, I think that's really kind of brought them back. I will say, I'm not sure why. I remember watching it as a kid when I came to the U.S. Again, it was one of the 3 channels we had in the mountains of LJ, Georgia. With no VCR, all the things. So I remember watching PBS. I think I probably learned English through watching. I can't put that to the test. I can't really tell you when or specifics, but I know I watched TV enough that I probably learned a lot of my English through TV, and Sesame Street would have been something that my parents would have put on. I know they would have. So with that in mind, I will say Sesame Street also just kind of the trends. When I was a teenager in high school, I have a picture of me on my 16th birthday blowing out candles of my cheesecake because I was that girl who did not like cake. So my mother spoiled me with cheesecakes. But like I had a shirt on with Cookie Monster. Mm-hmm. And it was cool to wear Sesame Street characters as a teenager. So that has come back around again, I believe. But I remember that as being a thing. So they come back. They're trend setting like constantly, and they circulate as to being relevant all the time. And I love it. Yeah.
And here in Atlanta, we have the Center for Puppetry Arts, which is really cool. And they have a lot of the original Muppets and stuff you can go see. I love it. But yeah, one of the other reasons I was like, you know, this would be a good thing to talk about as we're recording this, because things are moving. It is January 17th, 2025. Warner Brothers Discovery did not renew Sesame Street's contract. So they're looking for a new distributing partner. I keep seeing things that feel like they've already found one, but I couldn't pin it down. But this has raised a lot of concern around the decline in children's TV shows like this. And I remember when it was first sold to HBO/Max, you had to pay for that. It didn't used to be that way. And there being a lot of concern around that as well. So that might be a topic we should come back and revisit. Mm-hmm. Also, the timing with the inauguration coming up, with Martin Luther King Day coming up. The actress who played Maria has been very outspoken and has given a speech on MLK Day previously. So feels like the timing is right. Also, just remember when Elmo asked if we were okay and we broke the internet. No.
I mean, there were so many things between Rocco and his disdain for Rocco, as well as that Elmo has really kind of centered himself as one of the main characters.
Yeah.
Sesame Street, but yeah,
I forgot about Rocco.
Oh, don't forget about Rocco.
SNL did a whole thing about that. Oh my gosh. So also, I just had to put it in here. I was reading a lot from the actress's experience. And she did talk about a lot of the Star Wars stuff of Frank Oz and James Earl Jones and Mark Hamill. So I loved that. That was fun for me. Also wanted to do a quick shout out to the Muppet Wiki, who had an entry on Maria. That was really helpful for this because, again, I haven't seen the show. So it was really helpful to kind of get the history of the character through them, because a lot of people haven't done a long history on the character necessarily. A lot of stuff has been written about her, but not like the kind of timeline that we like to do in these. So just, yes, thank you. All right. So Here we go. Sesame Street is an educational children's show about the people and Muppets that live on the fictional Sesame Street. It debuted in 1969 and just wrapped its 55th season. Celebrity guests often stop by, and the show has tackled some pretty big topics. It's hugely nostalgic for a lot of people. It's won over 150 Emmys and is broadcast around the world. One of the mainstays of Sesame Street for many was the character Maria Figueroa, later Rodriguez, played by Sonia Manzano, who debuted in 1971 and stayed until 2015. Maria was a Puerto Rican teenager who got a job at the library, which later became the Fix-It shop. She eventually became a full-time partner at the shop, which the shop has gone through a lot of changes, I have to say. I was trying to keep track of it. But she was generally involved in that. Over the years, she has been involved in a lot of Sesame Street segments, earning the nickname Skinny from Oscar the Grouch. She frequently acted as the mediator between the Muppets. She was the, quote, straight man, as it's often called, for their antics. For several years, she played the role of the tramp in the Charlie Chaplin pantomime skits. In 1979, she and the other characters of Sesame Street visited Puerto Rico for a few episodes. Though she was romantically involved with David in the 1970s, she went on to marry Louise in 1988. Her mother came from Puerto Rico for the wedding. I tried to figure out if Big Bird officiated it because the picture implied that he did, but I don't know.
Is he wearing that little top tux?
Yes.
I remember this. This is what I had to ask. Okay, keep going.
Yeah. But Maria soon became pregnant and gave birth to her daughter, Gabby, in 1989. Maria and Louise ran the Fix-It shop and its various iterations as the Mail-It shop, the laundromat, for years. In 2011, she was hired as the superintendent of 123 Sesame Street. She retired in 2015, though Manzano reprised the role in 2019 for Sesame Street's 50th anniversary celebration, and in 2020 for CNN's town hall coming together, standing up to racism. Has a huge legacy. She was one of the first Latina characters on national television. And the actress who portrayed her, Manzano, was also a first-generation Puerto Rican who grew up in the Bronx. And she was really, pivotal. She later became a writer for the show, and she would write in, no, this is not the fruit that would be in the stand in this neighborhood or in Puerto Rico, or she was really passionate about making the Bronx look like the Bronx, and that stayed. She won 15 Emmys for her work as part of the writing staff. In 2016, she got a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Daytime Emmys, quote, in recognition as a pioneer in the representation of Latinos on television and for 44 years of portraying Maria on Sesame Street while positively impacting the lives of a generation of children and their families. And she has so many awards and honorary degrees. She's also done a ton of stuff, so definitely go and check her out. She's written books. She's written young adult books. She helped create a PBS animated children's show called Alma's Way. So just a ton of stuff. And she's spoken a lot about this character and how it impacted her and how she learned more about herself through the role. She wrote a memoir called Becoming Maria, Love and Chaos in the South Bronx. And she's really open about a lot of stuff in there. And here's a quote from a radio interview. It was revolutionary. I have very strong feelings about it because I was born and raised in the South Bronx and I watched a lot of television in the 50s. Shows like Father Knows Best and Leave It to Beaver and shows like that. I never saw any Latin people. And you never saw people of color. So when I saw Susan on Sesame Street, I was a college student at Carnegie Mellon University. And I said, oh my goodness. I mean, there's this beautiful Black woman with this gorgeous husband, Matt Robinson, Susan and Gordon. I said, this is really too much. So then I became Maria on the show. And by the way, because Latin activists demanded it so on the West Coast, and they said, if you have these role models for African-American children, what about Latinos? And they went, okay, great. And it was so new that, yeah. So then I got cast, and then I became what I needed to see as a kid. And she's really talked about it and the stress she felt about it. about being a good representation, but also how at least it sounded like from the interviews I read, the creators were very like, we want you to be you. We don't want you to be like, she tells the story of one day they put like way too much makeup on her and the costume was bad. And they were like, no, that's not who she is. Like, don't, we cast her for her. Don't do this. And then her really coming into that, her own as the writer and making those like, no, we shouldn't, it should be this. That's not how we would do it. And then having that impact on millions of people who watched and saw this. So it's really amazing. An amazing story and how long, like she was there for a long time.
I mean, it's one of the first people that I think of. That's why I mentioned her, and I knew her name immediately. Like, I forget so many things. We know this. And I've talked about the fact that I didn't watch a lot of children's shows because I was a little older, as well as the fact that I didn't know English. So it was a little more difficult. But I can't quite remember all the things. And this was one of the shows, of course, like I said, that I did. I'm pretty sure my parents put on for me. And remembering Maria, remembering her specifically, again, because feeling that connection as a brown person, obviously, but also her motherly nature or sisterly nature. I guess probably when I saw her, no, she was a lot older than me, but just having her as a representation and genuinely kind. And I think that's one of the things that Sesame Street continues to grow and learn is to represent people well. Like, if not just throwing in a token, like many of the other things, or bringing in a person that kind of looks like it could be. They actually bring people in to represent these characters really well because they understand these characters really well. And then opening up really hard dialogue through puppets. Like, it's such an amazing thing, but they actually mesh well with human characters as well. So, it's really fantastic. I feel like it was something that I didn't necessarily connect it to, but wanted. And I think that's for a lot of people. But again, I remember Gordon and Susan so well. And like they were such kind, like parental figures as well that was guiding Sesame Street in its way and opening up this diversity, as well as like, it felt like New York with puppets.
Yeah.
They did such a good job. But Maria was a seminal character with me finding a marginalized woman, a minority, I guess, at that point, in these characters, fulfilling roles of caretaker and loving friend. And seeing that was something that significantly I remember. I might not remember all the things that she went through. I forgot that they did a wedding, but I remember Big Bird with his tux. Yeah, I'm like, I remember this. But all of those things, and I didn't realize she had, like, the character had a child, like, was pregnant. I'm like, they did the thing. They went through the gamut of raising the children through Sesame Street. And I remember that vividly and loving that. The human characters is what I remember more as a children than I do even, like, the puppets to a certain degree. So when I say, like, Elmo has become a main character, he wasn't at that point. Cookie Monster was there. Of course, Cookie Monster and all of them were present, but they weren't the seminal characters that I felt like I was watching the humans interacting with the puppets. Does that make sense? And the puppets were not puppets. They were real life characters to me. So I'm not saying that, but I do remember at that point in time, those human characters as well. And it kind of like has changed a little bit because I don't know much about Sesame Street today. So I don't know who the characters on there are, the human characters. But I remember Maria. I remember Gordon. I remember Louise. Like, I remember them vividly.
Yeah. I mean, those are formative, when you're a kid, formative memories. And it clearly, this character was so important to so many people. And so I'm very glad that you suggested it.
Thank you for doing the work for me.
Oh, you helped me out plenty. And if I got anything wrong, please let me know, listeners. Because I've only seen like clips. I don't know why. I don't know what happened. Something went awry somewhere in my childhood.
Maybe you were watching horror movies then. Like, you were talking about X-Files, so it could have been. No. That wasn't scary enough for you.
Yeah, maybe. Well, that's a mystery for me to solve later. But in the meantime, listeners, if you have any thoughts about this character or Sesame Street, or any suggestions, please let us know. You can email us at stephanieandmomstuff@iheartmedia.com or hello@stuffInevertoldyou.com. You can find us on Blue Sky at Mom Stuff Podcast or on Instagram and TikTok at Stuff I'll Never Told You. We're also on YouTube. We have a TeePublic store, and we have a book. You can get wherever you get your books. Thanks, as always, to our super producer, Christina, our executive producer, Maya, and our contributor, Joey.
Thank you.
And thanks to you for listening. Stuff I Never Told You is a production by iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, you can check out the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.